Welcome to Cultured, a podcast for everyday disciples living in a crazy world. And today we're doing a special episode that is a kind of a Q&A that we got from Instagram. Just recently we got done with a relationships talk called Love Stuck, not Struck, right? Yep. Okay.
That's right.
And we had some unbelievable speakers that came in and partners with the Brook. We had Jess and Parker Manuel. We had Doug Dameron from Orchard Church. Basically, the Brook partners with lots of different organizations and churches throughout the Front Range and really around the world to see young professionals develop in their leadership. And I loved all of the content, and all that content is getting released on Cultured and on YouTube, so you can go back and listen to that whole conference if you'd like to. But today what we wanted to do is we had an Instagram poll of just different questions that didn't get answered at Relationship Talks. So we're going to dive into your guys' questions. But before we do that, we have the founders of the Brook here. Hey guys, welcome.
Hello.
This is Molly.
This is Tim.
Great to
Nice
be with you
meet
guys.
And you guys are experts on all things love and relationships, right?
We're learning.
We're learning. We're learning with you guys.
We're learning with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I loved about the conference is I was just
Yeah.
taking notes the whole time. I learned so much. I just feel like it's an area that I'm always growing in continually. So.
Yeah, and I'm glad that we could take time to do this because I've just looked through the questions today, and these are not easy questions. Mm-hmm. And it just reminded me that, the topic of relationships is tough. Mm-hmm. And there are real tensions that I think people sit with. And today we're going to go deep and we're not going to beat around the bush with the tough topics. So.
And I think we want to try to make sure that we address topics, give you guys our thoughts. We always try to go through the lens of what does the Bible say and then experience. And some of these are kind of gray areas. The Bible's not explicit, say, don't do this, do this. So take it or leave it. Like, this is just kind of our thoughts. We're not the authority. God's the authority. Go ask him, search the scriptures, go from there. But we want to jump into some of these. You guys ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, the first question we had is this. We had this question. Where is the fine line between guarding your heart in a relationship and being vulnerable and getting to know the other person, especially on the early stages of dating?
Yeah, that's hard. And I feel like that's a question we get asked a lot.
Yeah.
The guarding your heart, that terminology comes actually from the Bible, Proverbs 4:23. It says, above all else, guard your heart, for from it flows the wellspring of life. And so what we allow into our heart, we just want to be careful of because it really does direct everything we think about. So if you're like thinking about a girl all the time, it's going to consume your mind. It's going to direct, kind of the decisions you're making, where you're going. So we want to be cautious how much we're letting in our hearts. And I think this question is good because especially when you first start dating and you have all those feels, it's so fun, it's so exciting. It can be easy to just kind of like immerse yourself with that new person and they become your life right away. Yeah. And so one thing I would say just in terms of kind of coaching in the beginning stages of dating is I would say, you know what? Don't divert from the life you were living.
Yeah.
Stick to the way you were living. Do the things that you were previously doing. And in the dating phase, I would say you're exploring this new relationship, seeing, is this somebody I'm interested in? I'm going on dates with them. I'm not immersing them into my life per se.
Yeah, that's really good. And I like the way that I think about it, that I break it down in my mind is like the stages of dating, because there really are kind of different stages as we progress through dating. And we're always looking through the lens of, okay, is this someone that I could potentially marry? And if I'm not asking that question, they're probably not someone that I should be dating. But like in the early stages of dating, like when you're first getting to know somebody, like I think that guard your heart principle is really important. And there is a level of being vulnerable and opening up parts and pieces of your life that I think is important in order to get to know somebody. Yeah. But this is where that really difficult word comes in that I like to call discernment. Yeah. And we have to use discernment because there's not a black and white answer on, okay, you should share these things but not share these things. But I think as the relationship progresses and as you move forward into more of a serious dating stage, that's when kind of some of the more detailed areas of your life and your past and some of the more difficult topics that happen in dating are probably more important to bring up.
And what I liked about what you were saying, Molly, is don't get rid of the life that you're already living. I see this happen so many times. I'll be like friends with a guy and we'll like be getting coffee. He'll be growing in his spiritual life or, be involved in like a simple church. And then all of a sudden I don't see that dude for 2 months and I know exactly what happened. It's the same story every time. I've done this long enough. Oh, he got a girlfriend. And so what he's doing is he's going from 0 to 100, dropping everything else for this girl, and then it doesn't work out, and then he lost 2 months
Yeah.
of his life in that. And so I would just, again, caution people, like, guarding your heart's just being okay with it taking time. Like, I think so many times when we get in the relationship to begin with, we want to hurry the process instead of just allow time to like develop.
In the words of Brad Paisley, he wrote a country song and he says, "Love makes a man do some things he ain't proud of." And it's true, is like the emotions of love can be very, very strong. And so I think like having that foundation of saying, okay, I'm going to continue being who I am, continue seeking Jesus, seeking God. That is a surefire way of, I think, guarding your heart and also guarding the other person's heart.
And I think for guys, I'm going to speak specifically to guys. I think a lot of times guys are like stewing over what girl they should ask out, and they get like way down the road in their head with this girl. Like, oh, we have this in common or this, and then we'll have this relationship. It would go this long. And I'm like, that's honestly what dating's for. Like, don't go that far down the road in your own heart. You want to make sure she like matches up to some of those things, but really you can never know someone truly, like if you're gonna have chemistry, if they're gonna have the character, until you start connecting with them more on a dating level, of a romantic level. And so being okay with the process. Don't feel like you have to have it all figured out or know this is gonna be the person you're gonna marry when you ask them out. You do not know that. You can't decide that. That's what dating's for. So giving yourself some grace and like holding your heart close to yourself too.
Yeah, so just kind of even recap that, the 3 phases of dating. Jason and I did a talk on this 2 years ago at Relationships Talks. Was dating, so just getting to know somebody, getting serious, so kind of being in a committed relationship where you're asking those deeper questions that you were talking about, Tim, and then engagement, where you're kind of, saying, okay, yes, we're just preparing for marriage.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna go to our next question. It is, should feelings drive commitment or commitment drive feelings? How do you fight for commitment in a dating culture known for being non-committal?
Well, my first thought out of the gun is...
You don't want to commit to that question?
I don't want to commit to that question. And I have a lot of feelings around it too. Okay, so here's a helpful distinguishment. Feelings can sometimes lie to you. Have you ever been in a position where you feel like you've had feelings that aren't true? Right? Like, feelings are good. I don't want to cast feelings in a negative light, but sometimes feelings can deceive us. Commitment is a choice. Commitment is a choice. And so as you're thinking about, okay, well, should my feelings drive commitment? Should my commitment drive my feelings? Again, I think that it takes some discernment. But when you make the decision to go on a date with somebody, you are, in some respect, you are making a commitment to go on a date with them. Doesn't mean that you're committing the rest of your life to them. Doesn't mean that you're committing to marry them. But you're committing to taking the next step. And I think sometimes where people get hamstrung is that they are so afraid of any level of commitment because there's so many feelings, so many emotions wrapped up in that person or in dating that they get to the point where either they can't take a step forward or they commit way too far. So like I think I want to encourage everyone like to stay grounded, stay within yourself. You might be feeling emotions or experiences around that person. That's okay. Like your feelings aren't bad. But just staying grounded and saying, okay, like I'm going to commit to doing the next thing in the relationship to determine if this is somebody that I should move forward with.
I love what you said, Tim. You're not committing, like going on a date, and I think this is really good to note. A lot of times people get intimidated by a date because they think it's this huge commitment. Like if I say yes to a 2-hour date for coffee, I'm committing the rest of my life to this guy.
And then I've got to break up with him if it doesn't work out, and it's all over. Like,
that's not true. So I like what you said. When you say yes or you're committed, you're just being committed to the next thing. And there's so much, open end after that of what that's going to look like. But saying yes to that one date or that next thing isn't committing the rest of your life.
Well, it seems like one of the consequences that I've talked to some people about before that they've felt is when we have that fear of commitment. And maybe like the initial analysis of that person is like, I could see it maybe working out, I could see it not working out, so I'm not going to commit, is people miss out.
They do.
Like sometimes it actually takes that intentionality to get to know somebody and to really see their heart and to understand what are their interests and like, is this a person that I could be compatible with? And so I always encourage people, like there's not a lot of harm in going on a first date.
No.
But if we idealize that person too much and we go too far down the road, what it can do is it can prevent us from committing to anything at all.
And the question was, should feelings drive commitment or commitment drive feelings? My answer would be yes. Like you should have both. Like there should be commitment and there should be feelings. If you're in a relationship and you're committed to it, like if you've been dating for couple months and there's no feelings, that's not a good sign.
Yeah.
And if there's feelings yet no commitment, that's not a good sign. So I think we lean in this culture, especially young professionals, to being not committed. We're non-committal. We run all these events, all these happy hours. We always joke that like people buy tickets. We never know how many of you are coming till like 20 minutes before or as it starts, because no one actually commits. They're holding on. So I would like to challenge everyone, if you want a committed relationship, become a committed person. Not to a relationship, but become a committed person. Commit to working out, commit to walking with God, to reading the scriptures, to going and getting involved in faith community, going and getting involved in a simple church. And what I see is, even in spiritual life, a lot of times, people commit when it's good for them.
Yeah.
But what happens when it's hard for them? That's actually, in our marriage, when commitment really happens, is when life is really hard. That's when you decide if you're a committed person or not. So when actually you have conflict with your friends in your simple church or in your church, or when you disagree with something, that's the time to double down on commitment and grow as a person of commitment.
Yeah, and I just want to make this comment, the danger of being a non-committed person and taking the step into marriage based purely off of feelings is that you risk losing that commitment later in life.
Yeah.
And I mean, we all are very aware of the amount of divorces that happen. I think the stats right now are about 1 in 2 marriages will fail, which is just devastating. And nobody wants that. Nobody steps into marriage thinking like, oh man, this is not going to work out. But I think people who have that shaky foundation around commitment, that can be a really scary thing to bring into a marriage.
Yeah. Okay, next question. There's basically were a couple questions that are very similar. So I'm going to kind of say them in different ways. One was, is there supposed to be a spark when you meet your person? Second question, what if you meet a person who checks everything you want, they have the same values, and you're attracted to them, but you don't feel a spark with them? Do you keep trying until you feel that excitement, or does a successful relationship not need that? I think we probably need to define what's a spark, because it's like, this even one question was, you're attracted to them, they have the same values, but you don't have a spark. So what do you think people are saying here? What's the spark they're looking for?
I think the word that comes to my mind is chemistry. Like, is there like a physical attraction? Is there a chemistry there? And I love this question because I feel like there's a lot of girls I've coached throughout the years who a guy asks them on a date and they will say no, even though they check the boxes. And I always say, you know what, I tell girls, unless there's something majorly wrong with a guy, say yes to a first date. Again, you're not committing your life, because I've had countless friends. Actually, a new friend of mine I talked to this last week, she met a group of guys, and there's of course the cutest guy in the group that she thought she would end up with. It didn't happen. Another guy in the group, a couple months later, ended up being available, reached out to her, was super sweet. They started dating. She's married to him, but it wouldn't have been the first guy that came to her mind of like, this is the guy I'm going to date and marry. And so I just tell girls, if a guy asks you on a date, if they do have like good character, good things about them, give them 2 hours, And if there's still not a spark after the first date, but there's just some intriguing things, maybe go on 1 or 2 more dates. And if after those couple dates, there's still not that chemistry and attraction, it's okay then to say no, but don't shortchange the guy by saying no right away.
Yeah, I mean, we were just talking about one of our friends. I actually got to marry them, and they're 10 years married, and they did not have a spark their first date.
No.
And it barely was anything the second date, but they had same values, they loved Jesus. As they continued to pursue maybe potential like romance, the romance developed.
Yeah.
And so it was, a lot of times in our culture, we've uplifted the spark is the number one thing. And so instead of character, godliness, like vision, passions together, those are never the number one thing. So sometimes our spark meter is our highest level versus it's still a good thing. Like Molly and I have a spark. I mean, I sometimes like shock you.
She's shocking.
I'm very shocked anyway. But like there's a spark there, but it was not, our relationship isn't formed on a spark, because honestly in life, the spark isn't as sparky anymore. I don't know if that's a real word. Like life happens, and so you better have like commitment, love, and like a depth about you, not just a spark. A spark gets it going.
Yeah.
A spark doesn't maintain
That's exactly
or
right.
keep it going.
Well, and I think what I'm hearing you say too, Jason, is that like there's a biological component to relationships that happens. You've maybe heard it called the honeymoon phase before, and that has a good purpose. Like it's not a bad thing to experience that, but that cannot be the foundation of the relationship. And if that spark is overvalued, when it leaves, the relationship fails.
And a lot of times, because again, I'm not trying to communicate, Molly and I don't have a deep love, passion, chemistry. I think it's better than it's ever been 15 years down the road. But what you're saying is what Harv said in his message of there's these different stages. And what happens a lot of times is, especially if you start living together, and not married, you're doing the honeymoon phase, and that spark will eventually run out, and you didn't ever commit to it, so you can't go to the next stage.
Yeah.
And there won't be a spark.
One last thing I want to say too is that a tension that I've heard a lot, I think just in young professional culture, communities, is oftentimes I've heard ladies say, hey, there aren't enough godly guys out there. And then I've also heard guys say, well, when I ask girls out, they never say yes. And it's kind of interesting because I think there's a tension there, right? Is like you're really encouraging a lot of ladies to say yes, like to that first date if there's not something that's like blatantly wrong, or like if there's maybe some level of interest. And also at the same time, like continuing to encourage guys to like step out in faith and ask girls out.
Yep.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I've heard, it sounds like a lot of girls I hear, and this, I'm just saying it, it's especially if they're maybe, they just have this desire for like, okay, he's got to be 6'6", great looking, godly. I'm like, man, the list is just so long. I'm like, you're looking for a unicorn.
Yeah.
And then you're upset at like maybe who's right in front of you. Because there's, even in the Brook, there's some amazing godly men that I'm like, they would be like amazing husbands.
Yep.
Yet, and willing to sacrifice way more than like the pretty boy that has it all going for him, you know? Yeah. So anyway, I would encourage the same thing, that you should say, take a chance on people.
Take a chance.
Yeah.
That's the message.
Cool. Okay, Molly, I'm gonna ask you this. This is a girl asking. She goes, as a girl, is it better to straight up tell a guy you like him, drop hints, or do nothing?
That is a good question. It is a dance, right? Relationships are such a dance, and how do you navigate that? I think as a girl, it is good to let a guy know that you're interested in him by not being straight up, because I feel like that can kind of come off as a little aggressive and maybe even intimidate a guy, because a guy wants to feel like he can kind of be the leader and pursue a girl, and girls desire that. But I think it's good to kind of let him, kind of make yourself available, like when you're around each other, look him in the eye, smile, ask him questions, be like a little flirtatious. Just let him know, like, hey, if you ask me on a date, don't tell him this, but kind of make him feel like if you ask me on a date, like I would say yes, to you, sort of thing.
So from a guy's vantage point, Tim, tell me how you'd answer this.
All right, fellas, we have to be the ones who take the initiative. That's the word that I would leave you with, is initiative. It helps to know that, hey, the girl is maybe interested in me. Because sometimes what can happen is if it's completely vague and there's no level of interest communicated, what guys feel is like, should I keep pursuing this? Like, should I ask her out? She said no. Is that actually how she feels? Things like that. But I also just want to encourage the guys like to take initiative. Like if you feel confident that, hey, there's something there's maybe some chemistry, you're interested, ask a girl out. And also, don't be devastated by a no. Like, if someone says no, it's not the end of the world. Like I think that sometimes like we put so much precedence on the yes or the no. It's like, oh my gosh, if this person says no to me, I'm going to be devastated. And I think just guarding your heart and not allowing yourself to get in that position where it's like, hey, if she says no, that's okay. That may not be the person that God has for me.
Well, and I would coach also girls, if you're putting yourself out there, you're flirting with a guy, and you have no intention of saying yes to a date, don't do that.
Don't do that.
That hurts. You're really being pretty self-centered there.
Yeah.
Because you want to feel loved by that guy liking you, but you have no intention of saying yes. That's not what I would say biblically is loving one another, laying down your life for one another, especially as like brothers and sisters in Christ. Because that's what we are before any sort of relationship, like romantically, is that we are children of God, and we should love one another as brothers and sisters.
Yeah, guys and girls, don't lead people on if you don't have any intention in your heart of eventually dating them.
Okay, here's a juicy one. Is it okay to date my friend's ex? Ooh, I'm afraid it'll ruin our friendship.
I love this question because when it comes down to it, you do not own anybody. Like God made you. You're bought with a price. You are His, and you do not own anyone. So my answer would be yes, it's okay to date your friend's ex. Just because maybe you dated somebody for a couple months doesn't mean that somebody, your friend or whatnot, like that they're off limits, that they are yours, or that you owned them at one point. So my answer would be yes, it's okay. I think there definitely should be a healthy healing period. So now like if your friend, just broke up with this guy and it's like 2 days later he's asking you on a date, I would say that might be an area to question their character. There should be a healing period there. But if there has been, there should be no possessiveness of, he was mine. He's not.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, and I think too that probably there's a deeper thing beneath the thing in even the root of this question. And a lot of it probably comes from the dating culture that we just find ourselves in America. What can happen sometimes is that if two people are dating and they really push the gas pedal quickly and they get intimate quickly, it can create a really strong connection, like a really strong connection. And so then what happens is like if that couple splits up later down the road or they break up, it almost feels like a mini divorce just happened. And so then somebody else stepping in and pursuing one of those people in a relationship can almost feel like, oh my gosh, are like they cheating because there was such a deep connection. And so like I would just really encourage people too of like, I think this is why it's so important to date with honorable intentions and motives. Like when you're dating somebody honorably and you're guarding their heart through the dating process and you're honoring physical boundaries through the process, what it actually does is it really sets the relationship up well to step forward into marriage, or if things don't work out, you're not in a position where it feels like a mini divorce just happened.
Yeah. Also, real quick for the girls, don't ever use this as an excuse. If a guy asks you on a date, do not ever say, I'm sorry, but you're too close to my best friend who I dated. Because what that does is, what that says to the guy is, it's not a clear no. He may think, oh, she likes me.
Yeah.
She's just saying no because of my friend. If I can get around that, then we still have a chance. Yes, let's keep going. And that's not true. So girls, just be straight up. If you're not interested in him, just say no.
And just blame it on God. Just kidding.
No, don't do that.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
God told me not to date you.
Oh, man.
Don't use the God card. That's like you just don't ever do that.
Yeah.
As we kind of go on really quick, I'm interested in a girl, but so is one of my friends. What should I do, Tim?
Okay. So this is a question that I've actually heard quite a bit before. And I just want to give a principle for dating. Like this principle will save you so much heartache when it comes to dating: honesty. Like just being honest with people who are around you, because there are complications sometimes and you're in community and there's friends and people have dated each other before. And so if you're interested in somebody and you have the intentions to ask that person out and your best friend is also interested, hey man, I just wanted to let you know that I'm interested in so-and-so and I'm going to ask her out. And I don't think that you necessarily need to ask for permission. It depends on the complexity of the relationship, and that takes discernment. But just being honest and honorable can save so much heartache.
Yeah. All is fair in love and war, but really, it's you don't want to make a decision for that person.
No.
Also, I'd encourage guys. I've seen this done a lot, where guys will actually, when they're interested in a girl, almost go tell every single person in their sphere they're interested. I'm like, it's almost. This is a crude example. It's like a dog peeing on its property,
marking the territory.
Marking my territory. This is mine. I'm like, that's not. Don't do that,
no.
Guys.
You
we
might
need help,
want to.
man.
You might tell a close friend, and if they're interested, then you can have that. But if you start telling lots of people, guess what? There's probably somebody else there that's interested, and the race is on.
Yeah.
You just created more tension probably for yourself. Yeah. So I would actually keep that pretty close to a few really close friends.
And it communicates a possessiveness, which I actually don't think is something that's attractive.
And not biblical.
Yeah, I think when it comes to dating, one of the most healthy practices that we can adopt is a relinquished will. Like when you're going into dating, and this is hard, but I really want to challenge everybody in this. When you go into dating, truly with the heart of, God, I desire your will. Like I desire, because I believe that God does have a will for your relationship. Sometimes we think that we're just out in the ether and that God like is kind of disconnected or uninterested in relationships. I don't think that's true. I think that he does have a will and he does have a plan. And so like going into dating with Lord, I want your will. And so if this is the right thing, like would you continue to lead me towards this person? Or would you continue to show me things about their character? That's a really good place to be.
So I want to move us to this question. And I'm going to ask a couple of different ways that people submitted. It says, just like tips on like how to get over someone who you like but doesn't like you. You're having a hard time after a breakup, or maybe they didn't see it coming. Another person said it this way, my heart hurts because my ex felt a God-level conviction that we had to separate, but without a reason. I felt God answered my prayers and sent me him to be my husband and to keep pursuing him through our struggles. So how do you just get over this tension where you're maybe still in love, but that person doesn't love you back?
Yeah.
I think this is a time, a lot of times when Satan comes in and tries to attack our identity. So when we face like rejection of any sort, we feel like our identity is at stake. So I think it's really crucial here to have a good support system around you, to be honest with your friends, ask them to pray for you. Memorize some verses about who God says you are, you know, that you are a child of God, you are fearfully and wonderfully made. And this is a time to kind of double down on that identity piece.
Yeah. Well, and I just would really encourage everyone listening too, is that the temptation is always going to be to run to the short-term pleasures. It's gonna feel like, maybe I should run back to a person that was in my life in maybe an unhealthy way, or maybe I should run back to, you know, a past relationship or substances or whatever the thing is that you feel like is going to bring you comfort in that moment because your heart is hurting. And that's such a lie, like to the point that you just made. I mean, the only place that a broken heart can be healed is in the presence of a loving God. And like I'll just speak from personal experience here. Like I went through a terrible breakup. I mean, a really, really tough one when I was in my early 20s. And, you know, as I reflect back on that so many years removed, like God used that time in my life profoundly to change my heart and to help me get through it. And it's funny, I look back on the relationship now and I'm grateful. Like I'm grateful I went through it. I'm grateful the breakup happened. Like I just saw the goodness of God through it. And at the time it was devastating, but every day I was in the Word. I was reading His promises. Like I was claiming my identity in Jesus, like you just said. And it's just amazing how God will start to change you. Like He will start to change your heart in those moments. And so if you are going through a breakup, like I just want to tell you that like God has like He has such a wonderful heart for you. And you know, we don't change when we see the light, we change when we feel the heat. And He's probably calling you into something deeper. And so I would really just encourage you to lean into what God's prompting you to do.
And this is so crucial that you have a faith community and you have a faith in God before you get into a relationship, because if it does go south, that's the time you need friends around you. So don't isolate, get friends around you and get help that is needed. Don't like do this on your own.
One last thing, Jason, on that. So the question that you asked about, okay, thoughts on how to move forward when God puts different messages on your hearts. This person had an ex that felt like God kind of placed the conviction on his heart to break up. I guess I just want to go back to the importance of what that person was probably feeling was that the relationship wasn't going towards marriage. I don't know exactly what they were feeling, but be really cautious with that God told me to do this. Because that can be really hurtful of someone's feeling like, oh man, the creator of the universe is speaking to this person but not speaking to me. And it feels like there's a spiritual disconnect. And so I think just back to that point of being really honest with what you're actually feeling and not using something to kind of cover up those emotions.
Take ownership.
Exactly. Take ownership,
Yeah. A couple more questions we have is just this. How does one actively and intentionally take steps to heal from a dynamic past in relationships and sexual sin? So, and let's kind of hit on, we kind of just talked about healing from past relationships, but in that area of just, and you maybe have baggage from sexual past, how would someone heal from that?
Yeah. I think sometimes we put like sexual sin in this category that's just like so different from other sin because we feel, you know, so shameful. But sin is sin, and God tells us in Psalm 23, you know, it says, "When I kept silent, my bones wasted away through my groaning all day long. For day and night your hand was heavy on me. My strength was sapped as in the heat of summer. But then I acknowledged my sin to you and did not cover up my iniquity. I said, I will confess my transgressions to the Lord. and you forgave the guilt of my sin. So I think first and foremost, just acknowledging it, right? Like with any sin, when we keep it to ourselves, we do feel this weight. Like in this psalm, it says he felt this weight when he didn't confess it. So I think confessing, and then from that, that guilt, we don't have to carry that around any longer. So I think just being honest and confessing our sin is huge. And then just knowing that as you confess that you are a new creation. Like Jesus says, like, you are a new creation. He says in Isaiah, like, your sins that were as scarlet, they're washed away, and you're white as snow. So I think even just like visualizing that in your brain, just like, okay, what does it look like for me to be a new creation? To look like for that red to be washed away and to be white and be made new. And what I would say is, no matter what your baggage is, whatever your past is when it comes to sexual sin, that you can start today, you can start now, and you can have a new track record.
Yeah.
That you can bring your new track record into your marriage. You can tell your future husband or wife that, hey, starting this day, I brought a new track record into marriage, and this is what I'm giving to you, and that this is what Jesus has done in my life.
Yeah. So just to summarize that, what I'm hearing is, on one side, radically dealing with sin. Like, it's important to confess it, to bring it into the light. Like, secrets are the things that can kill you. Bring it to trusted friends and mentors, but also, like, radically approaching the throne of grace and seeking the healing that comes through Jesus. And so doing both of those things is what's going to create that new creation, like you talked about.
Yeah, and I just love what you're saying, and I want to double down on it, is that in this culture, we have uplifted, Harv talked about this, we've uplifted sexual sin as like, okay, that's the worst, when really it's just part of sin nature. And God's grace is so good. He loves us so deeply. And I just want to encourage anyone that's listening, like, this is what's so amazing about Jesus. Is that he just loves us so much no matter what we do, no matter what we've done, and he's always inviting us into relationship. And I just want to encourage you, if you've never made that decision, really, we would love to help you. Reach out, DM us on Instagram. We'd love to connect with you about just what it looks like that Jesus covers it, and that we can live the life that we all want. And our prayer is for every single person that you guys would be able to live an awesome, awesome life. And even if you're in a relationship, if you're not in a relationship, you have the relationship that is Jesus. Because it doesn't matter, single, married, dating, engaged, we're all connected to Jesus. And so thanks for joining us today. We're so glad that we got to do this. We're going to be doing more podcasts kind of like this with Q&A, and we'll talk more. Thanks for joining Culture. If you want to connect more with Things of the Brook, please download our app, follow us on Instagram, subscribe to us at YouTube. That's it.
That's it.